Hi guys, my name is Eric Ploney. I am doing another video for my classes at Sonoran Desert Institute. This time we're doing the customizing and woodworking class. Um, just made it to week 8 and we're finishing up our muzzleloader build here. Black powder muzzleloader, percussion cap. Um, this has been a heck of a project. It's been a fun project, but it's been a heck of a project. And I have learned quite a lot. It's definitely been one of the more rewarding classes we've done so far. It starts out, you'll receive it, and it's going to show up in a box that looks somewhat like this. You'll then unpack that box. It'll come with a few tools, some of them being box marked chisels. It'll say they're sharp. They are. I've cut myself multiple times doing the inletting process for this rifle. You also get some Prussian blue here. This is your inletting die, and just a few other little small tools. A lot of the other tools you get from the previous class, including your files, your rasp, and stuff like that. I found most of them did a pretty good job. I did end up going out and buying just a few other tools, but I'll get to those here in a minute. First step you're going to do about week 4 is going to be the inletting of the locking plate here. So what inletting is basically taking that Prussian blue I showed you, and you're coating the back side of that part that you're going to be inletting. And you're going to press it into the spot where it's going to go, and when you take it out, it'll leave blue dye in the spots that need to be carved down. And you just do that until it gets a good even fit. You'll then start working on polishing the brass pieces that are being inletted next. That's just done with, not polishing, my apologies, shaping and removing the casting marks. So you get sent a set of needle files from one of your previous classes. Those needle files come in handy for shaping the areas around the trigger guard and stuff like that. You'll then get rid of the casting marks in the butt plate prior to inletting that. Inletting the butt plate just is a similar concept to inletting the lock. You're coating the plate with the Prussian blue on the side that's going to be making contact with the stock. Pressing up against there, you can use a rubber mallet, which I used, or wood mallet, leather mallet, whatever. Just trying to get those indentions there to kind of outline where that stock needs to, or where that butt plate needs to sit. And then you're just going to do the same thing as with inletting the lock, just carving down those high spots so it gets a good even fit. Next step, you'll be inletting the trigger and the trigger guard. For me, there wasn't a whole lot involved with that. It was already pretty well shaped for me. I had to remove some material at the back of the trigger mechanism and some material at the back here of the trigger guard as well. But for the most part, it slid in there just perfectly fine. I did end up, this is one mistake I somewhat regret. I did end up shaping a little too much area out for the rear part of the trigger guard. And it kind of, as a result, sits kind of low in there. I'm going to have to remove some more material here before we probably do our finish on there. But the trigger mechanism itself, when it sat in there, it started interfacing with the hammer and the whole locking plate mechanism already. There wasn't a whole lot to do involved with getting that inlet in there. Once the inletting was done for those two parts, they were just installed the screws that came with them. Some people use shoe wax to install those screws. I use candle wax. Just you're trying not to dry out that wood and get it to crack. You want a little bit of something to reduce the friction as you're getting those threaded in there. Next was installing the thimbles. These are going to hold your ramrod. Not too many issues with this. I don't like how this rear thimble kind of sat in place. You're supposed to inlet the metal, not the actual wood for this part. And I messed around with it. I still could not get a perfect fit in there. When I finally screwed it in, it kind of bowed out a little bit. I'm not very happy with it. I'm hoping I can shape up some more of this brass and get it to fit it and look a little nicer. The front thimble, I didn't have any issues installing that one. The next step was installing the barrel tenons. These kind of look like a front sight post almost. They slot in, and, dovetail on the bottom side of the barrel, and it's, like I said, it looks like a front sight post, maybe a little bit taller. And what that does is instead of using barrel bands or something to attach your barrel to your stock, instead what you do is you drill through the stock, through the barrel tenon and out the other side, and then you drive pins through that, and that's what holds your barrel to your stock. Um, Currently, I don't have my pins in because they're kind of a friction fit in that wood stock. I don't want to be driving them in and out again over and over again for the different processes we got to do as far as finishing all that stuff. So I'm leaving the pins out of there. I'm using masking tape to hold the barrel in place so far. Next, you're going to shape your stock, and holy cow, was there a lot of shaping to do. This is where I had to go buy some more tools. The biggest part was the buttstock here, or the butt plate here, my apologies. The comb sat very high. You had to remove a lot of material to get that to get down in there and sit properly against the butt. And it was a good maybe 3/4 of an inch of wood I had to remove off the top of the comb. They send you a file or a rasp here in a previous gunsmithing tools class, and it was working. It was slow. I ended up going to Home Depot, getting a little bigger rasp, and this helped quite a lot. As well as this one for kind of evening out some surfaces. That helped a lot with material removal because there was a whole lot to remove on this butt area here. Also had to remove a lot of material around the butt plate to get it to match up smoothly there. I did have some issues. I took it a little too far with the rasp I had. I had quite a few dents and scratches in there that got pretty close to the brass. But once I hit it with the sandpaper and stuff on a later step, it evened out pretty good. And pretty happy with the result for that. Installing the nose cap was next. I accidentally did this on a previous step when I wasn't supposed to. I misunderstood some of the videos that SDI sent, and so I did a few steps too early. There was nothing too difficult about it. Just lining up, finding that center line, then taking a countersink and making sure that the brass screws there fit flush against the nose cap. I wish I had done it after installing the barrel, because I did it before I installed the barrel, and as a result, there was a little bit of fitment issue. I was able to fix that with the needle file, and now it matches up and pairs up pretty well. The next step is shaping the forend of the stock. Right here behind the nose cap was almost just a 90-degree angle of the wood coming off of it, and it kind of looks like an ugly shelf. My wife asked me multiple times as she came down here and checked on me doing the project, hey, is that supposed to be like that? And I was like, I don't think so. I eventually got to the point in the textbook where it said it was optional. And I was like, well, I already told the wife I'm doing that, and she said it looked ugly as it was, so I went ahead and shaped it. And just kind of matched the profile of the nose cap here, blended it all in. And I thought it looks pretty good like that. Definitely better than the ugly shelf that it was originally. The textbook says that when you do that, you're removing a lot of the material that supports it, but it's definitely a better look. The next step of shaping the forend is you're going to look along the barrel channel, and you're going to make sure that the wood on either side is even. You may need to file or sand away some of that wood to get it to match on both sides. Some of the more shaping I did was around this thimble area, just trying to get it to match a little bit better. The thimble sat kind of deep into the wood, so I had to kind of remove a little bit more material to get that to match up a little better, but I still think I need some work on that. The last step was sanding and removing dents and scratches from the stock. I ended up sanding mine to about 220 grit sandpaper. They're required to sand to 180 grit. Probably gonna do some a little more. Still just a little bit rough in some spots. I think I'm gonna try to go for the closed grain finish on this and get a little bit more smooth and glossy appearance to it once I'm finally finished and put the finish on it. But we'll see. I haven't fully decided yet if I want to go for a more weathered look or a more wall hanger shiny piece. We'll see. The last step is the functions check. This rifle features a little double trigger here. You pull the rear trigger to set it, and it turns the front trigger into like a hair trigger almost. It's a pretty light trigger pull at that point. The next step is the half cock position. This is almost the equivalent of a safety, I guess you could say. I still don't consider it very safe because you can still accidentally bump it back a little further. I don't like the idea of a half cock. To me, it's just kind of dumb. I get the concept, I get what it's there for, but I don't like calling it a safety. So to the half cock, nothing happens. Full cock, set the trigger, and it goes forward. That is the functions check for the rifle. The next class we're doing is another 4 credit hour class. That's going to be the final bluing the barrel, browning the barrel, I'm sorry, putting the finish on, installing the sights, that kind of stuff. But that's going to be the follow-up class. I'll probably post that up here as well. One step I found incredibly challenging with this is installing the screws that you're pre-drilling holes for. So like back here on the butt plate, and then on the nose cap, and then I guess as well with the rear thimble. When installing those, or when you're drilling for those screws, if you line it up, you mark where you're going to drill, and then drilling straight down, I found that when I did finally put the screw in, let's say the piece was supposed to be flush against something else, if I screwed straight in, there was that piece had a little bit of movement, and once you put that screw in, it can kind of separate a little bit. I had a huge problem with that on the butt plate here. When I installed that top screw, I just put it straight in, and it allowed a little bit of a gap at the back of the stock and the in-between plate here. So what I ended up doing, I talked to the instructor about this, asked him what he thought, and he said drilling those holes at a little bit of a slight angle. So when I did my nose cap here, I drilled it at a little bit of an angle coming back, so that when I installed that brass screw, it pulled that nose cap flush with the wood that I had shaped for it. Yeah, that definitely, it sealed those gaps, improved the look, and you don't notice that that screw is at an angle. That's why I said slight angle. Some procedures we practice that we can apply to modern firearms. Inletting the action in the barrel. It's a pretty common thing for hunting rifles and such. If you want to get a custom stock for that, you need to make sure that the barrel and action is custom fit and then eventually bedded. We're not doing bedding for this, but then eventually bedded into that stock to get a good custom fit, improve the accuracy. The other thing we learned, so that's inletting. The other thing we learned about was stock shaping. You can get into various measurements, the height of the comb, drop it heel, cast on, cast off, things like that. This just custom fits the stock to the shooter. They sell these things called tri-stocks. It's usually for your big gunsmith shops that are building custom stocks. But it lets them mess with the measurements and kind of figure out where people's natural point of aim is, and you can adjust and shape the stock according to that. We did a little bit of that as far as like I had to drop the comb or the comb on mine a little bit eventually to match up the heel of the butt plate here. And I don't know if this was something I messed up or if it was just part of what they do at the manufacturer level. But my rifle has a slight, I don't know if you're able to see it here. So that's level, and you can kind of see the butt plate's a little bit of an angle. So it's got a little bit of cast off and a little bit of an angle to the comb and the butt plate. I'm not sure if that's something intentional done at the factory, but because of that, this metal uncomfortable butt plate actually fits perfectly into my shoulder. Whereas if it was straight up and down, the toe of the butt plate here would kind of be digging into my chest. So a little bit of that kind of weird cockeyed angle and cast off gets me a good fit behind the rifle. So again, don't know if it's intentional, don't know if I messed it up when I was shaping, if I maybe shaped too much off one side, not the other, but it worked out. One thing I tossed around about an idea as far as further customizing this thing and kind of making it more personal, because there's a few hundred other students going through the classes and they've all built pretty much the same rifle for semester on end. You got to do something to kind of set yours apart. Um, Although I'm pretty happy overall with the build, and I'm kind of more leaning towards that showpiece type kind of finish, I want to further make it a showpiece. I'm considering inletting one of the challenge coins I received on active duty. It's just a simple catamount coin here. I'm considering inletting that into the buttstock, but that would help me practice and learn more about inletting there. Whereas previously, like the locking mechanism and other parts, a lot of it's already done for you. This would allow me to inlet something from start to finish completely from scratch. Thought that would be interesting and add kind of a unique appearance to it. Definitely make it wall hanger worthy. The other piece of somewhat customization I wanted to do was the sights. Did a little bit of research into kind of some more vintage styles of sights, some of the original peep sights, some of the original like the buckhorn style, where kind of it's like two horns coming in, and you line that up with your front sight post. Some of those look a little neater than the kind of cheap looking sights that came with the Traditions kit. My understanding is that they used to actually send plastic sights with this, and that would have completely ruined the look. But these still look pretty cheap, and it's like my front sight here. You can almost see it's this brass sight set in a brass front sight post set in a steel block here, but mine's crooked. It's kind of unsightly. So I'm looking at some other options for from front rear sight. It just dovetails in, so as long as I can find something that can kind of shape that dovetail to fit properly, should be able to swap that out. And again, give it a nicer kind of more classic look. Maybe mess around with some more vintage technology there and play around with that idea. Just in closing, not necessarily in response to any of the prompts for the class, but there's a lot of other students that have made videos like this. So I just kind of want to contribute my piece as far as tips that I found, problems I encountered, and just kind of ways to go about doing it. And I found a lot of the other students' videos very helpful, so I hope I could just contribute on mine as well. Look forward to seeing you guys in the follow-up video when I get this thing finished, barrel browned, and project complete. Thanks, guys.